Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we're really excited to have our 2-hour Magick special. And we have 3 amazing women on our panel today. We have Sandra Inman, who is a spiritual mentor and coach and a practicing Wiccan for over 30 years. And she merges her knowledge and experience of spiritual practices with her love of dance, music, and self-development modalities. We have returning to the show, Jacki Smith and Brandy Williams. And for those of you who don't know these amazing women, Jacki is the founder of Coventry Creations, some of the most amazing candles. She's a best-selling author of Coventry Magick and co-author of DIY Akashic Wisdom. She's a witch, a teacher, and just a wonderful person. And then Brandy Williams has a very rich background. She's a Wiccan high priestess, a pagan magician, a tantric yogini, and she's written numerous books. A couple which we've had on the show here. One was my favorite, is The Woman Magician. And she is going to be talking as well about, magic and witchcraft. So before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our broadcast. And this will be a 2-hour show, so stick around. We're going to go a little bit beyond our usual time since we have a panel, and it's going to be a lot of stuff. So hang in there with us. Next week, we have our good friend Wendy Allenby on, and she is a angel practitioner. So we're going to go into magic again on a slightly different level. And then we're going to end the month with our good friend Lama Kathy Wesley sharing some of her Buddhist wisdom. So we got some great guests coming up, and you can find all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SAXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. It helps us to cover some of our costs. But the most important thing you can do is go to our YouTube channel and click subscribe, because that really makes a big difference. And we definitely appreciate all you guys that have subscribed, and we're getting more and more every day. So we love all of you as our guests and our fans. And with that, I don't want to take up too much time today because we have such an amazing panel. So I'm going to kick it back to Krista. So with that, take it away, Krista.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And welcome, ladies. So let's maybe get to know Sandra a little bit, because we don't know her at all. She's coming in from Australia, too. So we really appreciate her joining us at such an early time. So welcome, Sandra.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us just a little bit about your journey to get to the place you are today. And by the way, I forgot to mention you have the Witch Mystery School too.
Yes, well, it's been a long journey. I started, I've always been interested, I guess, in spirituality, all things occult, right from whenever I can remember. So it's always been there. And coming to the pagan path or the witchcraft path was something that I came to in my very early 20s. Joining covens, being part of the whole pagan scene. And whilst I enjoyed all of that and enjoyed the connection with nature, enjoyed the connection to the path, I still felt that there was stuff missing. There was things missing that wasn't really helping me really know how to really deepen a practice or actually really connect to a practice or connect to deity or even to connect to myself. I went to the craft, I think, looking for those missing pieces, when really the journey to those missing pieces was actually really the journey for me knowing myself. So it then took me away from the craft for a little bit, where I was working a lot in Buddhism, even with Sufi groups, to come to the point where I came back to the craft again and was able to take all of that with me. And what it was that I needed to bring into the craft was simply the practices that are about us working on who are we, what are we, and understanding that who we think we are isn't actually who we are. And to go through that journey into the shadow, go into that journey of what's the ego, and that everything is the ego, understanding that this is a holographic universe and that what we think is real isn't real, bringing all of that back into the craft. Because back when I was studying in Covens, these things weren't dealt with. It was about the magic, it was about working with deities, it was about working with the Sabbats, but there wasn't any training around how do you actually have a better relationship with yourself and discover yourself, your true self, and go on that more mystical journey. And that was what was missing for me. So I was able to bring that back when I came back to the craft, and that's when the Mystery Witch School sort of evolved out of that.
So I love that. I want to build on that a little idea of know thyself and how that applies to, especially like you said, entering witchcraft. And of course, it might be a little different today, but it might not. And I like to ask each of the other ladies how they feel about that concept of knowing yourself versus, like you said, doing the outer work of witchcraft, which is also important. So let's start with Brandy.
Oh, that's a wonderful story, Sandra, and a wonderful way to put it. I understand what you mean about witchcraft being initially about doing the Sabbats and learning the magic. And then I also felt too that I needed to deepen, I needed to go somewhere to kind of learn what the self-development system is. And so I've gone on this journey of going through ceremonial magic and being pagan. And then I went into tantric practice. And tantric practice has this really deep, broad, very ancient and live understanding of how to look at the person and how to do the mysteries. And so what I've been doing in my practice is to look at the theurgists, the Neoplatonists, who had this understanding in the West. And it's a very similar understanding to the tantric journey. And so I relate that back to everything that I do as a witch and as a magician that sort of underlies what we do. And I think that's where our learning is as magical practitioners, as esotericists today, is building out that deeper level of understanding. So that's wonderful work. I'm going to look up your school.
Jacki, what do you have to say about this really interesting topic?
I love it. I love, because this is critical. And so I did similar. I walked away from that Wiccan path, and I walked into more of a psychological view of it. I walked into different healing modalities that dealt with getting into your body and getting into what's happening in your spirit, building a relationship with your spirit, building a relationship with your psyche and your shadow side, and all of those things that are going on, and going into like your journey through your own personal tree of life, the Kabbalah. And not just like, oh, we're in this Sephiron, where this is happening and this is what it means, but what does it mean internally? And so I ended up going more into a psychological and psychological magic. So that's what my book, Coventry Magic, is about, what the book that's coming out, the big book of Candle Magic, is about. Akashic Wisdom is really about magic is here first. If you don't build that relationship with you of why you need magic, why are you casting this spell? Why are you lighting this candle or doing this thing, or really just have this need? Why do you have this need for this magic? Why do you have this need in your life? Because if you don't have a need, you don't need magic, right? So if you need a spell, you have a lack, you have something that's displaced or not working right. So you got to heal. Magic is healing. That's how I magic equals healing. That's how I've been walking through my adult witchdom versus my young witchy, my witchlingness was like, ooh, I can move energy, right? Ooh, I can drive down the freeway and make somebody move so I can drive faster. And which is not really helpful. It's just forceful, right? Yeah. And that doesn't really do much in life except force things. And actually, what do they say when when you add more fuel to a dumpster fire, you just have a bigger dumpster fire. You don't have a resolution. So I needed to figure out how to get the dumpster fire out and get out of the dumpster.
It sounds like everyone's pretty much in agreement that part of the path involves knowing yourself. And it seems like from what you're saying, it's good advice for beginners to start with that, especially since we now have a lot of different tools for it. All of you've expressed different ways of doing that, which I think is really wonderful. I'd like to also kind of continue with Jacki and the concept of power in witchcraft, because it does seem like no matter where you enter, what time period you enter, that witchcraft is really associated with people that are disempowered, and that you have, like, think about witchcraft as justice, for instance, and let's say you're not getting justice in your life and you're a disenfranchised group. And let's talk about the power that's maybe you're drawn to when you were younger and how it's evolved as you have worked with it, as Jacki was saying. So, Sandra, what would you think about that?
When I was younger, I think I was just looking for solutions to, yes, that feeling of disempowerment and wanting to be able to have more control over my life. And so magic just seemed to be a way of being able to do that. But as I got older, I guess, and more mature, it was really about understanding through the journey that this power isn't actually out there. It isn't actually the magic that's going to do it for me. The magic's a tool. But the actual power actually is something that's internal. And the only way that I can be empowered is to go into my shadow stuff and work through all of that psychological crap that's in there. So then I was always been attracted to psychology. I'm an EFT practitioner, so I do tapping with people. I found tapping to actually be incredibly wonderful as a spiritual tool, because it helps you connect to your subconscious mind. It helps you connect to you and where everything came from, where the beliefs came from. So, and change those. And as you change them, then you start to become more connected to spirit. You become more connected to nature, and you seem to get more of a sense of this truth of what things are. But it comes from experience of having gone down into your own stuff and learning about yourself, rather than trying to manipulate the world outside. It's more about understanding self and seeing things and changing your perspective, because when our perspective changes or our perception changes, then everything else changes too. The magic almost happens on its own.
I love that.
I want to jump out of my seat and across the world and hug you on that one. I say that frequently. If you you know how in the like Charmed and the they say you can never do magic for yourself, you know, blah blah blah, which is hokey. It's wrong. The only person you can do magic on is yourself.
Absolutely.
It's the only place magic is yourself. You have to do magic on yourself. Because when you do magic on yourself, you change yourself, and then it's like a domino effect, and the world starts to change around you. First, it rebels. First, it says, I don't like this change. Go back. But then, and that's the test. So when you empower yourself and you go into a room of people that disempower you normally, they don't like it. So that's the first test, but then you go into a different room eventually, and then that's magical. That's how it works. It doesn't, you can't do a spell and go do the same thing. Magic demands that you change. So it's all the same stuff. I love it. I love it. I love that we're talking the same language. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Brandy, what do you think?
And I think you asked the question, how did your magic change, or what did you go as you were younger to magic to do, and what do you do now? And I kind of think it is like a Maslow pyramid of needs. So when I was young and reaching for magic, what I needed was the basic needs. I needed a place to live, I needed a job, I needed to heal, I needed people around me, and magic could help me to attract those things to myself. And then as I've where I am now is magic is helping me to deal with the changes that come at end of life, which can be really challenging. So people start leaving your life. They start dying. They start becoming ill. Your body starts to do those things too. And so magic then helps me learn how to center myself, not just in the world, but in this sense of being part of something greater than myself. What's important, centering my energy in the eternal part. I kind of think it like there's a horizontal level where magic is working, where I'm doing stuff in the material world, and then there's a vertical level where magic is working for me spiritually. And more I'm moving my consciousness away from that horizontal place, what do I need in the world, and to the what do I need for myself in spirit, what's really important. And so that's where you get into the deep, like, let's work on myself. Whoa, I didn't know about that. Oh no. Oh, I don't like that about myself at all, right? And so you start working through that stuff, right? And so that's where I am, and that's where the magic is helping me now. And I connect to through deity. Theurgy is sort of the way I look at it. So there are deity forms that I inhabit or that I embody that help me move through those places. And that's kind of where I take in my magic. It's more like theurgy than the making things happen.
And that's, I'd like to talk a little bit about what you would suggest for a totally brand new beginner in today's world in terms of what they would be, I guess, influenced by. Should it be books? Should you go on YouTube? How about Instagram? Do you look for teachers? And base it, I think, maybe more on your own experiences going in when you were young. And of course, these things were not available for some of us. And both positively and negatively, I would say they have positive and negatives. But I'd be curious to say, okay, let's say I'm brand new and I come to one of you and say, hey, I just don't have a clue. What would you advise me in terms of, besides the know thyself, which we know is part of it, but what else would you advise me?
I can go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I do relate to that. I mean, when I started, there were just books. We couldn't even find teachers. There wasn't an internet. So all of those things are good. It's good to have books. It's good to find teachers. It's good to look on YouTube and Instagram and which talk, TikTok. My advice to people though is get 3 friends. Find 3 friends that you can share yourself with, that you can bounce stuff off of, who can you can say, okay, I've heard this. Does that sound right to you? People who you can share like what your fears are, what you're doing, and who will help mirror the best part of you to yourself and also call you on your stuff. If you've got friends, that's the most important thing, having a circle of support. And also, it may be that friends move into and out of your life over stages, so you might not have the same 3 friends. It's nice if you can, though, and at least one of them should not be a partner. That's my word of wisdom from a long life of magic. Your friends will bail you out when nothing else will.
Oh, I love that. What do you other ladies think?
A long time ago, I did not hit the college scene, but some of my friends who did, and as I was studying and they were bringing more and more stuff to me, one of the things they taught me to do is look at the bibliography. So if you're reading, look at the references. What are the continual references that people reference? And to get some legitimacy for what you're reading. And so it was really kind of interesting as I was, so sometimes a reference is not good. So we know that. And so sometimes if people are saying the same thing, but they're all using the same reference, it's just kind of like understanding where stuff is coming from if you want to really get to the core of the information. So that's where I came from. It's like, okay, everyone's quoting Scott Cunningham. Great. Awesome. Is there another source? I wanted another source. So I went looking for another source for another point of view. So I found Paul Barrel, who is a great source. And I really liked what Paul Barrel had to say. And then I found, another source and another. So it's great that what you're seeing on Instagram, Witch Talk, all of these things are very interesting. And you got to remember, those are most of the time opinions. If you see me on Instagram, Facebook Live, YouTube, most of the time I'm giving you my opinion. I'm going to be honest, it's my opinion. But if you read something in a book that I've written, I've done my research. So understand that there's a difference between the two. So there's a lot of stuff on astrology. We were just talking about astrology pre-show. There's a lot of stuff on astrology that may not be correct that's coming up on Witch Talk and Instagram and whatever. So check source.
I love that. And I really, you could apply that to all learning, is that you look at the source of the book, both to be aware if it's well sourced and also to get really good ideas. I tend to do that with my other books I just love. I say, hey, maybe they have some even suggestions that I would really like, but that's a form of learning that not everyone I think is taught. Or if they are, they don't use it. I was talking to my father about that the other day about, college is supposed to teach you how to learn. And he said, even getting your PhD, it's about teaching you how to do the research so that the next thing you do, it's not that you're an expert now in whatever topic that you've done for 2 years or more. It's that you know how to research it. And I think that's something that's really, really valuable in all of metaphysics. I think that's really an important point to make. And like you said, you discovered someone really interesting. Sandra, what is your view on that?
Well, we didn't have a lot going on back in the 90s here. There were very limited resources. Of course, there was no internet. So it was bookshops and libraries. The libraries had not much at all. So it was just what was in the bookshops. So all I had access to was Raymond Buckland, Scott Cunningham, Marion Green, and various other people from that era. So I devoured pretty much every book that I could get. And then met up with a coven and actually learned from other people. I think it's great at the beginning to, yes, research wide, get lots of different points of views, definitely see where things are coming from a reference point of view, and share that with people who may be of like mind. So yes, your friends. And get a sense of how does all of this stuff that you're learning resonate with you? What does resonate with you? What doesn't resonate with you? Because yes, there is a lot of misinformation out there, but it's really about you figuring out what resonates with you, because it's like the beginning of your journey. Because during this path, you do have to learn how to listen to your own inner voice and your own intuition. And this is the really good place to start with, okay, here's the information. What resonates with me, what doesn't. And then when you get to a certain point, it is important to then try to find other people who can then help you with their own experiences. And we learn so much better from other people. We can only learn so much from a book. And a book can't really teach you how to practice either. You only learn how to practice from practicing and from having other people guide you with what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and helping you with any questions that you have. So yes, start with the broad information, and then with anybody or any group that you resonate with, put it out there that you're looking, and then try and find other people who can help you then.
Yeah. I'd like to build on the idea of, because I was thinking about this, witchcraft as a craft. And I started a book, you might have read this, it's a new book, Changeling, A Book of Qualities by Aidan Wachter. And it's unusually written because I just read maybe 10 pages, but he has 55 qualities of a witch. And it's almost poetry. Some of it's just really beautiful. And so he'll say a witch is, and this is all based on his experience. He makes it really clear that he's eclectic and these are the things he's learned. And so I love that idea, though, of looking at the qualities, particularly of a witch, whereas maybe you would see that, or maybe in a magician, you already have that a little bit because it has a little more of a tradition that has some linear knowledge. But one of the qualities is a witch is crafty. And then he talks about craft. And it's an obvious thing, but I love to actually talk about what is the craft and how does one craft your practice? What does that look like? How would you do it differently if you would do it differently from when you're young? So because you mentioned, Sandra, the idea of just immediately starting to do something, to practice, even if you think you're silly and you're not doing anything right, how are you going to learn? You know,
you've got to do it. It's a practice. It's a practical thing. Any spirituality is practical. It's not just reading books. The books are a great place to start and to get the knowledge, the head knowledge. But if you want the actual gnosis and the actual bodily knowledge or the phenomenological knowledge, you have to actually start putting what you've read into practice. And that's the hardest part for people. They don't know where to start. They're afraid of doing the practices. There's a lot of, again, misinformation out there. So a lot of people are afraid of doing anything. They're afraid of doing things wrong, not doing things right. What happens if I do this right or wrong? And that's where it's helpful to have other people to come in and help you out and share your own experiences so that you then can even just do a really simple practice. Meditation is probably the best place to start. Just starting with those really basic, turning up for yourself every day. Do something every day, even if that's just go outside, put your feet in the dirt and connect with nature. Start doing something, get out of that head space, that intellectual space, and start bringing it into the body.
Even as an experienced practitioner, I found myself recently being afraid to practice again. So here I am in more of a corporate environment. So I have over 30 employees, and I've been doing this for 30 years. Here's the 30 number. Apparently I got to play that number today. So I have people who are not magical who work for me because they have great experience in other areas, and I don't discriminate. And so I started getting a little nervous about being very magical every day. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. We need a little cleansing here. I want to smudge everybody. And I want to do some things to lighten the energy. And I felt weird and awkward, and I held back. And things started to fall apart. I know better. I know what to do. And I started to not practice. I started to hold back because it was a little weird again. And I went, wait a minute, I know better. So I stepped in and I started practicing in a new way, which was inclusive in a new way. And also a little softer, shall we say. And so I just went in like we're hiring again. And right now it's challenging to hire, in a new way. And so I'm going to pick up lunch at the market, and there's this huge basil plant. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. And I brought a basil plant to work in our manager meeting. I did a spell today with everybody at our manager meeting. I had everybody talk about who we want to hire and what qualities we want. We wrote it out, and we planted it in the basil plant to attract a cooperative. And then I also added a lemon balm into this big basil plant to make it grow bigger and wilder, right? And I haven't done that in a bit, but it was that I hadn't done it in such a long time. It's that practice thing. So even us experienced folks, so going back to the inexperienced folks, when you're new and you think you're going to get it wrong, I started feeling that way again because I have a lot of non-magical people around me, feeling like I'm going to offend and get it wrong, and people are going to run away screaming because these crazy witches that I work for. So we all feel that way, and we all got to take a breath. And like Sandra said, show up for ourselves. I had to show up for myself. When you said that, it's literally what I said to myself last week. I got to start showing up for myself again, showing up for my magic, showing up for my business in this energy. So I love that you said that. It's something that was phrasing that I used exactly. So that's really, and not be afraid. You know what, if I get it wrong and people get afraid of me, they're going to be afraid of me anyway. I'm the boss. So
well, that's a really wonderful example, and also very humble. I love that you're vulnerable enough to say, hey, I've been doing this so long and suddenly I'm insecure. And I think some people think you've been on a spiritual path for so long and suddenly you're there and you'll never be shaken, and or if you are, you know exactly what to do. And I love that you give that as a real example. Brandy, what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking that, and I was thinking that it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, one of the things that I do as I talk to people is that they express a desire to figure out what to do. I think Sandra said that too, that people are looking for a practice and looking for daily practice, and they're really not sure where to go. And I wasn't, and that recurs. It's not just like when you're starting on the path, but every 10 years, like, what am I doing? Where's my practice? And one of the things that's important is to give yourself permission to experiment, to try new things. Maybe that reinvigorates your practice. That's one of the reasons I've had so many different practices. I'm like, okay, I played out witchcraft for 10 years. What else can I learn? And then making mistakes is how we learn. So it's okay to do that. And it's okay also, people get stuck like doing something and they're like, okay, I've been with this group for 20 years and it's really, I'm not feeling like I should be here anymore. It's not serving me. So I feel like you can kind of like Marie Kondo your commitments, you can go, okay, it's not sparking joy for me anymore. I can take a picture of this. It's an orange pillow. It will never fit in my house again. Give it to Goodwill and move on. So it's okay to leave a practice too and move on. So yeah, and the daily practice too, that's one of the reasons I do, like you said, craft for me also means physical stuff. So I love the candles. I mean, if you don't have any other thing to do, if you can't think of something, get a candle and light it once a day and do something, right? So I love the physicality of magic. That's why I did Cord Magic as a book, because if I'm stuck, I can just take some thread and make something to move myself forward in my practice. And I think the physical stuff is really important to ground us, to embody our magic. We are on the physical plane, so it's important to do that.
I also found when I first entered witchcraft, and I came from a very structured tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, and so I was really doing sort of a free fall for a while. And what I did was I memorized one of Doreen Valenti's great poems, and I would say it daily because I'm a poet, I'm a word person, and I love the concept of words in many traditions, whether it's mantra, and I love that incantation is a natural part of many traditions, but certainly witchcraft. Wouldn't you say that incantation, even simple little things, whether you say it from your heart or you like to memorize something, that could be something people could start with, and it doesn't have to be to gain anything necessarily.
My practice, my daily practice is to look up a quote every day. It's not necessarily a magical quote. It's to find words to inspire me. I go on like insight of the day or quote of the day or something, like a couple of different sites. If I don't like that one, I go to that site. If I don't like that site, I go, if that's not like, oh, I don't like that quote today. I have a couple of books I flip through, but I just want to find something to think about to inspire my day. And then from that quote, I'll find my gratitude. And then I'm like, okay, well, like today's quote was, be content to act and leave the talking to others. Oh, and I forgot to write down who said that. So then, so I thought about that. And I said, well, what is be content to act and leave the talking to others? And then I meditated in a way, contemplated that quote. And I said, well, what's my gratitude today? And I said, oh, my gratitude today is joy. So I'm not sure where that came from but that's my practice. And that's been my practice for a couple of years. And I thought, I realized that like actually earlier this year, I said, oh, that's my practice. So your practice doesn't have to be, I love that you have, the words are very important to me as well. But I just want to, if people who are new, your practice can be very simple. It can be a very simple thing that connects you with your divine self. And then your divine self is always connected with divinity of whatever name or whatever divinity you connect with. And so that your divine self is the bridge. And so then you can start to walk in that place of gratitude. Your spirit starts to walk taller. Your spirit starts to settle into your body. And then you start to be a little more connected with your own energy.
I love that. That's a really wonderful practice. I think it's also what I like about it's naturally different without having to make it different. And you have some words or ideas that will reflect in your mind differently. So it shows it will help you with open-mindedness, I think, with the quotes. And I think that's a wonderful suggestion. How about you? Go ahead.
Yeah, you were talking about memorizing a prayer, and I remembered memorizing the prayers from Aradia. Pray to the moon when she is round. Those were really lovely when I was starting practice. And my practice now is around deities who have mantras. I really love mantra. I really love the ability to just repeat something and settle that presence in my body. When I move out of the deities that have those mantras, which are basically Hindu deities, and move into other practices, I use their names as the mantra. And I think that's a place that we're really developing. We're developing those especially incantations, repetitive things that get those deities into us. So I think it's a great thing to say. Chris, I think it's a great place to go. Yeah.
The mantra, I'll tell you a funny story. In Venice, there used to be a fellow right by the beach, and we'd walk by him in the morning. He said his mantra super loud all the time, and I never saw him. I didn't quite know what the mantra was, but I have to tell you, it really stuck with me that he was like so passionate about it. And I really always enjoyed walking by. I don't know if maybe living with him, I would have, necessarily. I think Michael has a question or comment.
Yeah, actually, just something real quick, because I wanted to circle back to something we were talking about earlier, and Jacki sort of touched on it as well, is the not giving away your power when you first start on the path too. And I think that it's so vital to protect yourself, to educate yourself a little bit before you start working with groups or seeking out teachers and so forth. And it's not just Wicca or witchcraft. I think it's every spiritual path and religion, that there are people out there that are simply up to no good, and they're looking to take advantage of people sexually or so forth. They'll pretend that they have all the answers and that they're the big shot when it comes to magic and so forth, just to lure people in. But I think it's so dangerous if you go into it completely blind and completely naive and completely open and trusting, especially as a younger person. So I'm a big fan on the idea that even if you don't get all the answers, at least start with a bit of education first on your own, decide what's healthy and what isn't healthy, and make sure that you have the empowerment and the self-confidence to say no to people too if you don't feel like it's right, because people will try and pressure you. And I think it's important to be able to say, that this isn't good and this isn't healthy and I'm going to walk away from this. And it's sometimes hard when you're a young person to have that kind of self-confidence, as we were talking about. So I'm going to ask Sandra for her comments on that, because she does a lot of teaching.
I've had a lot of experience when I was in the Sufi group. The teacher turned out to be quite the narcissist, and the whole you start getting into that relationship of coercive persuasion with a lot of teachers or a lot of gurus out there. So if you're coming across anybody who is telling you that you have to do everything that they tell you to do, that you can't question them, then they're red flags, because you should be able to question anyone, and you should be able to also have your own autonomy. It's not a case of, and I guess too, because it's tradition within it's a lot of the Eastern traditions to always listen to the guru, to never question the guru. So it's part of that tradition. But I have also heard that in magical traditions, that's also, people are also doing that. So it's really important to understand, are you in an abusive relationship with this person, with this teacher? Are they showing narcissistic qualities? So before you go and join, I guess, any group, do some research on cults and what makes up a cult. Do some research on narcissism and narcissistic relationships, because they're very, very common, and they can be one-to-one, or they can be in small groups, or they can be even global, these sorts of dysfunctional relationships. And they're definitely out there, and you do have to be careful, because these kinds of teachers, in my experience, they do a lot of gaslighting. They will build you up and then they'll throw you down. So they keep you in this constant state of you worrying about whether you're impressing them or whether you're getting it right or you're getting it wrong. And I've had the experience of being in that sort of a situation, and my gut and my intuition always knew that there was something wrong and something not right. So listen to that gut, listen to that intuition. part of the path is you learning to have to stand in your own power. And sometimes meeting a teacher like that can actually be very useful to you, to be able to force you into learning to stand in your own power and get your confidence in yourself and have that confidence to be able to say no or to be able to say yes when you want to do that. So it can be a wonderful learning opportunity, but it's one that can be incredibly devastating.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, Michael, and really good what you're saying, Sandra, too. Is that I know mine was from an older student that I admired. And one of the symptoms I had looking back was I had a lot of issues with my solar plexus, like really bad stomach pain, like terrible. And I was too young. And luckily I did find some other people that would say, hey, that's not right what she's doing. And that idea that you also look for, other opinions about things. And yet at the same time, you can also see it as a learning tool. Hopefully you learn and get out of it, and then you recognize the symptoms. And I think we all have different things we learn on the journey. How about you, Jacki? Did you experience any of that, or, people that have experienced that?
My first husband, he was 20 years older than me. He met me when I was 17 and he was 37, and he wanted to be my guru. He is very narcissistic and very gaslighting, and wanted to be the coven leader and blah, blah, and on and on and on, and the textbook story. So so I experienced that whole thing firsthand, and it was a very painful lesson. Michael, you sparked something in my head that I'm seeing right now out in the internet world that I experienced pre-internet world, which was, I'm seeing it on this huge level when it happened in this small level when I was younger, and I had with groups of other younger new practitioners when we were all trying to find information. So you had, this person had this piece, this person had this piece, this person had this piece of information, and we came together. And we would quickly have this group think until a new person came in with new information, and then our group kind of crumbled a bit while this new information came in. Well, what do you mean Loki was like this? Hang on a minute. Well, here's this historical information that tells us this thing. And so it was because there was a lack of knowledge, so now on this internet level, there's this huge internet groupthink, cancel culture, etc., that says these 3 people decided that this is bad, and they have this huge voice on the internet. And so they made this amazing meme that got shared by these 1,000 people, and now everyone thinks that it's truth. So there's this group think that's coming along. So as a new practitioner, as you're getting into this, beware of the group think. Beware of who you're listening to. Are you new? Is this a new person? How long have they been into their spiritual practice? I just remember the first teacher I had, sitting in the class and realizing in the 3rd class that they've been doing this for about 18 months and going, wait a minute. Well, at least they know more than me. So, and then looking for a teacher that maybe been doing this more than a year and a half. And then in the early days of the early days of the internet, when there were chat rooms, I forget what the name of the different chat rooms were, and then this woman coming up to me and saying, well, I am the high priestess of my coven. And I'm like, well, great. How long have you been doing this? She goes, well, I've been doing this for 3 months. And that kind of energy of like, just beware of this. How long has this person been studying? So if this person who is an expert is 20 years old, I love that you as a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old have studied this much and have this much passion. I absolutely love it. And the 40-year-old who has been studying this entire time, may have a little bit more information and experience, and maybe has a little bit more to give you. So whose information is maybe a little more hefty. I'm not saying right or wrong, but maybe has a little more weight. So there's a lot of fast, quick experts. You can become a really quick expert right now, and it takes about 10 minutes.
It's so true.
I know.
But there are also
I've written
ways
those articles.
People lie about how long they're doing things. And I know this from firsthand. For instance, I know someone that advertised and studying and doing tarot for 20 years, but only now and then I happen to know the person. And so they exaggerated rather than saying, hey, it's been a hobby of mine and I've done it. It made it sound like she'd been doing it more than at the time I'd been doing it full time. And I remember thinking, like, I wouldn't have known that, but I know her. And I thought, wow, why do we have to lie about these things? Why can't we just say, hey, I've been doing this for a year and a half and this is what I have to offer, or I've been doing this for 10 years and this is what I have to offer. So I think that you also have to be careful of that and look into what they mean by I've been doing this for 20 years, because people exaggerate that even. But Brandy, I wanted to hear your thoughts too about the whole abusive power and teacher thing.
Yeah, and it's sort of now. My first book was Ecstatic Ritual, Practical Sex Magic. So I addressed that in my personal life, and I addressed the idea of safety around sexuality as a teacher when I was going out in the 90s. And Sandra said something about not questioning the guru. We had a lot of people coming in and sort of presenting themselves in a way. And then there were a lot of stories about sexual abuse that have come out in recent years around those people. So one of the things that I would, and I experienced that too, right? And so one of the things that I do when I talk to people is to say, you never have to have sex with anybody for magic. You do not have to have sex for initiation. You do not have to have sex for teaching. You don't have to give anybody all your money. Your teacher is not your life coach. Your teacher can just teach you this one thing, and then you take that into yourself. So, and it is really hard, especially when you're young. And as a woman, it's really hard to stand up and say, no, that's not right. So it's one of the reasons that I didn't really study Tantra for until now, until I'm older. I'm less of a target. And also the teaching has evolved too. So now I know people in America who are lineage teachers, and I know people in India who are lineage teachers and learning from lineage teachers. And that whole idea of not questioning the guru is definitely going away. So the guru tells you, like, I'm going to give you this practice. You have to do it, don't give it to somebody because it's secret. I'm going to give it to you. And that's the only thing they get to tell you. They don't get to tell you, oh, and by the way, now you go quit your job, or here's your partner. You have to go and marry this person. None of that stuff is happening, just around the practice itself. I think that's really healthy in the development of magical teaching. And it's also really healthy for us to talk about it. I'm really glad that Michael brought it up, because it's important to get across to you, because it's really making me mad that it's still happening. 40 years I've been saying it's okay to say no, and it's still happening that people are getting preyed on. So we will create a circle of support for the people who are coming into the practice. You can own your body, you can own yourself.
It's a really good point that it's still happening. I did want to add that at least in the Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is really the only tradition I've studied, you are supposed to question the teacher first. There's actually a whole text on the teacher-student relationship, which a lot of people don't know about, where you are supposed to be looking for these qualities in a teacher. And it's like a big book. It's really difficult because with the guru relationship, what I do and what the teacher does, we affect each other, actually. And so you're supposed to be on the, really not just jump in because you think this is the guru. And again, this is just one facet of the guru. I know it's different with different people. And there are really good gurus that want you to question them. Like, they don't mind it. They're humble. But for some reason, I don't know why people don't know about that aspect of the guru, because that's what I was exposed to very early in life. And so I just wanted to mention that. So I did also want to talk, we sort of talked about it a little bit throughout this, the idea of solitary versus group work. And I'd like to hear your experiences with both of them and what you would suggest for beginners. We can start with anybody. And
Well,
we,
all magic starts with you. So all your magic is a solitary practice. It's the base practice. And then anything that you do with other people is always about negotiating and what you can share with each other. But I think fundamentally all magic is solitary. I also know that there are a lot of people who experience isolation. It's kind of interesting because when I started in the very early days, it was really hard to find other practitioners. The internet didn't happen. And then there was this big moment where there were all these festivals and people were going and meeting each other in person. And now it's kind of, with the internet, it's kind of been a little bit more isolating. And of course, with the lockdowns, people feel really like that they only can do magic with themselves. So it's once again become this difficult thing to navigate. One of my first events was called a solitary convention.
I love that.
For practicing by yourself, we can all meet in one place. We can go to a state park and let's talk to each other. And so we did. And so that's kind of that was how we handled it. We can find each other on the internet now, and that's why I said find 3 friends, right? Because they can be in person friends, they can be on the internet, but people find it really important to have a connection. But all magic starts with you, and then it moves from there. That's my thought.
Sandra,
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
do you think about the difference and how has it affected you?
I like the combination of having had Coven experience, but also being probably mostly my whole life more solitary. There's times of ebbing and flowing, going in and out of it. For me, I'm naturally an introvert anyway, so I enjoy my solitude. But I also enjoyed the social aspect of being with a coven. So starting out as a solitary first, doing all of the research and the experimentation on my own was great. I felt the need, though, to meet a group of people, to join a community, to get teachers. And that's when I found the Coven. And I enjoyed the Coven. The Coven was great. We'd go for our initiations, we'd go camping out into forest, and we spent a lot of time doing group activities, creating things together, building things as a group. And it teaches you about, teamwork and how to work with other people and how to also, I guess, compromise on things as well when you're working with a group of people. So I think it's good to have both. It's good to have group experience and solitary experience. And it's okay to weave your way around it. Spend some time with a group, and then when something happens, so for example, in my case, we split, so we formed another coven, and then everybody from that coven went different places around the world. So then it was back to being solitary again, then finding other groups when I felt the need to join another group or have another experience with a group, come back to being solitary again, and just allow yourself to go with where the path takes you, because it will probably take you to places of being with a group and having that experience. But it's also good to be able to be able to do this on your own as well, because it's true that it is a solitary practice. Even when you're in a group, it's always you and your practice. It's just how that works with others and how that works when you're on your own.
Yes, I totally agree. Michael, did you want to add something, or did you have a question?
Yeah, for Sandra's benefit, we've talked about this, I think, in previous shows, but it was a cool thing that Krista and I did back in the day. Is we had a small working magical group. I think it was 4 or 5 people. And we'd have our monthly, full moon rituals or whatnot. But we wanted to get away from the idea of ego and high priestess mucky muck things and all that kind of stuff, because we felt everyone had their own things to contribute and their own voice and their own gifts and talents and abilities. So each month the person would organize the ritual. And instead of calling them a high priest or a high priestess, we called them the duty witch, because it was their duty to organize the ritual. And the last part of the ritual was they'd have the other people draw straws, and whoever drew the short straw had to be the duty witch the next month. So we kind of let the gods decide. So every month it was somebody different kind of organizing it and running it rather than just one person. And it was so cool because it became so eclectic. Everybody had a different take on magic, and they kind of brought their own personalities into the rituals. But it was nice because it also kind of broke down the ego stuff, which I think was really awesome. So feel free to steal our idea, Sandra, for the duty witch.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I love doing that. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And one of the things I just want to add here is one of the things I miss about coven work is, as a woman, I don't feel I can go in nature in the middle of the night by myself And we went to a very isolated part in Nova Scotia for one night to do a ritual by the ocean. And it was so memorable for me. It was like incredible. That's the one benefit of having at least friends, where you can at least go into places in nature that you feel safe. At least I maybe there are some women that know martial arts or something and they feel like they can take care of themselves. But that's one of the things I do miss about having a coven. But Jacki, what do you think?
Early in my young witchling days, I was part of different covens, and it was a quite unhealthy experience. So again, the ex-husband. So as I matured into a witch, I found that I was really doing a lot of my stuff alone, and then being inherently a control freak leader. Finding whenever a group of people got together, it was everyone's face turned to Jacki. What are we going to do now? So I found that I needed to practice by myself, because I kept waiting for a group to validate me and validate my magic. So I needed to go on my own path to validate myself and to say what I'm doing. I don't need a group to tell me it's time to do magic. I don't need a group to say I can do a spell, or I can honor whatever I'm going to honor. And that was something I really had to travel that path by myself and be very comfortable and find my own tradition. And my own tradition is not agrarian. I'm not a farmer. I don't like to garden. I don't camp. These are not the things that bring me joy. I like to go into the city. I like a hotel. I like a lovely posh room with a great shower. So those are the things. So I had to find my own path, and that was really very important to me. Now that I'm a little bit older and I really don't want to lead anybody anymore, I have enough of that at work. I'm finding interesting people that are bringing a lot to the table for me. And so I find that I dip into different groups of people in different moments where I get to have really magical moments with different groups, mixed groups of, and they're not even magical practitioners, to be honest with you. There's incredible magical moments. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago with a group of entrepreneurs, and we were experiencing some really powerful magical moments where we're all talking about things that we were bringing to pass in our lives. And we were standing at the Lincoln Memorial in the site of the Washington Monument. It was just the whole, if you've ever been there, you're standing in front of Lincoln, and then the Washington Monument is reflecting on the water. It's just this whole Mason crazy ceremonial magic place. And we're all talking about what we're manifesting, and every one of us have manifested it since then. So I'm finding those are the things that are stepping into those moments and having small groups here and there.
That's a really good point, that it can be an organic, more fluid idea of a group situation. I had that at work for a little while. Three of us got together and we'd talk about our day right before work, and we had our little magical group, and we're all very different, and it was really beneficial, but it wasn't a formal group in any way. And I love the idea of it being with other people, no matter who they are, that your minds, again, the idea, the mind is what connects you to magic. And if you're in the same place with the ideas, then it's a magical moment, like you say, Jacki. And Michael, you have another comment?
Sorry, actually, for Jacki's benefit, one of your employees at Coventry Candles says, please ask Jacki about the Witches Union. So now we have to hear all about the Witches Union. So take it away, Jacki.
Yeah, the Witches Union. So that is our group. Thank you, Hannah, for reminding me of the Witches Union. So one of the ways we're doing this is for fun. A couple of years ago, I created a Facebook group called the Witches Union. And so it's a bunch of us folks that are solitaire or exploring magic, or maybe new to magic. And I feel that we're all witches. We manifest things, and we can all become very magical and witchy. And if you decide you want to manifest a thing, you get to be a witch. And so we have cards. We have Witches Union cards, Coven 13. And so the Facebook group, the Witches Union, you can join. You just got to say that you're not going to be a jerk, or do spammy things, and be a part of it, and just join us there. And then you get to be part of that big coven if you want to.
I love that. Thanks for reminding us about that. But I would like to talk a little bit about, the idea that we talked about it, Jackie, in a separate show, the archetype of the witch. Is that something that is an archetype in everyone that you can draw on? And is there a difference between embracing that archetype within any tradition and the actual witchcraft? And again, and this is just your thoughts about it. What do you think about those? Are they similar, different? Is there a reason why we use the word witch over magician? To me, words matter because I'm a writer, but it doesn't mean they're not similar. So it's to me, I pick a word when I'm writing because it has a certain meaning to me, and also a sound, because the sound of the word witch, even saying that, can scare people still, which is amazing when you think it's just a word.
I love that we are all coming from the 90s. I love that we all are coming or earlier or not. I mean, you said no, so I thought maybe earlier, but maybe you're just from the 2000s, I guess.
I'm from the 70s.
Okay. But we all have that memory of the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, when witch was very, very verboten. We weren't going to talk about, we were reclaiming the word. When people would say, "You're such a witch," really trying to not say the B word. I still correct people to this day. Honey, if you want to call me the B word, call me the B word, because you're not insulting me by calling me witch, because that's my title. And so I love that word. I use it as a title. To me, a witch is a title like teacher or student or friend. I'm a witch. It's things I do. I do witchy things. And it literally is, I wish I could show you my business card, but it's not within reach, but it is a title on my business card. I'm a CEO, president, witch of Coventry Creations. I decided my title locally is head witch of Ferndale, Michigan. And the people in Ferndale, Michigan decided that they agree. So I've gotten the title of head witch of Ferndale, Michigan. So it's a title. And because I do these things, when I study, I'm a student. When I teach, I am a teacher. When I do craft things, magical things, I am a witch. So that is how I view it. And one of my big, hairy, audacious goals that I started 20 years ago was to normalize the word witch and magic. And so I use it all the time. And I see, since I've been doing this for a lot of years in the wider market with my products, I'm not saying I did it by myself, but part of the normalization of making things magic without Disney being attached to it.
Mm. I love that as a title. That is an interesting point of view. It reminded me of the fact in some research with, I know this is totally different, but it reminded me of Mary Magdalene. Some people think Magdalene is a title. And that's just another example of using a word. But Sandra, what do you think of all of what we're talking about?
Well, a witch is somebody who practices witchcraft. So it's like a dancer, somebody who dances. So it's it is a title. It's in some ways it's healthy not to get too attached to labels, because labels are we're more than the label. But so I try not to get too attached to labels. But the archetype of the witch, to me, it's about somebody who's quite independent and quite it's that independence, it's that sovereignty of the being of somebody who is a witch, who practices witchcraft. As to why other people like to use different names, I don't, I think people are scared of the word witch because of all the connotations that have been associated with it. And I have myself even been afraid to use the term. But when I have used it, I've been quite surprised that I actually get quite a positive response from people, particularly now than when I was in the early days in the 90s. It was much more scary to go outside of, I guess, my own social circle and tell people that I'm a witch. Whereas when I do that now, I seem to get a much more of a positive response from people. So people are becoming more educated about witchcraft not necessarily being this evil devil worshipping thing that it's been made out to be. And I don't know, the archetype of the witch to me is somebody who is standing in their power and standing in their sovereignty.
I love that idea.
I have to tell you guys a funny story that it was Krista's birthday one year, and I went to Ralph's, which is a grocery store here, grocery store chain in California, and to have a birthday cake made and decorated. And I said, I want to put on it, happy birthday to my witch. And the people at the store totally freaked out. They were trying to save me. They thought when I gave it to her, we were going to get divorced because it was going to cause this big fight by giving her this insulting birthday cake. And I said, no, she really is a witch. And then they said, no, you can't say that. And it became a whole thing. It took me like 30 minutes to persuade them that it wasn't a bad thing. So it was really funny.
I forgot that story. Yeah, that is really funny. I also wanted to add that I have found sometimes oddly people that are somewhat magical afraid of the word witch. So in the maybe it was around early 2000s, I made a friend at work and she had nightmares. So I was really into making dream pillows and I made very basic ones and I would put lavender in them, and I picked, I thought, a thoughtful animal for her, and I said, well, here, I want you to have this dream pillow. I'm just going to help you with your nightmares because I've had them, So it was really, and she knew me and she knew who I was. And then it made it worse, and she started like really bad mouthing me and really saying scary things about me. And luckily I took the advice of the animal cards, which told me to play possum, and I didn't do anything and it worked. But I was really so surprised because I wasn't expecting it from someone that knew me and was, open themselves to magic. So that's why I wonder if sometimes, even though it's becoming more normal, that there's still these underlying, maybe they're traumas. I don't know, that something gets triggered, and certainly not to be afraid of them. But I just remember being really surprised. Like I thought, wow, I didn't expect this person to be like this.
We've got the program that's been embedded into our psyche since we came into the world. So from that subconscious point of view, that program's still running underneath. And if it hasn't been changed, which it probably hasn't in most people's psyche, when anything goes wrong, then the witch will become basically the scapegoat, because that program's still running underneath the surface. So even though on the conscious level, people are saying, oh, witchcraft isn't necessarily this evil devil worshipping thing, there's still that subconscious belief that's been embedded into us and conditioned into us since we've come into this world, that will usually dominate. At the end of the day, it's those subconscious programs that dominate. So it still concerns me. I still feel sometimes that one has to be careful, even if it seems like people are being positive towards me. There's always that possibility of people going back into that subconscious program.
That's a really good point. What do you think, Brandy?
And I was going to say too that it's also still true that there are people religiously. There was a religious war, and it's still going on. So there are people who do target witches, who say this is what witches look like, this is what witches believe, right? And in the 70s, I encountered that. So people would see me reading books on the street and walk up to me and say, don't read that. I was at a party and my friend introduced me as a witch, and I found myself backed into a corner in the kitchen as everybody shouted at me, stop being a witch. So I had to inhabit being a witch. I had to step up to it. And when I at one point in my life, I was the national president of Covenant of the Goddess. And one of the things that I was asked as I ran for this office was, are you willing to stand up and say I'm a witch on television? So I embodied witch. I had to take on that whole persona. And then we did that work in the world and still do. Covenant of the Goddess still does that work where we go and do education and say, I am a witch. This is what a witch looks like. It's a 50-year-old man can also be a witch, right? And that's made a big difference. in my lifetime, that's shifted enormously. So it's no longer threatening your job or threatening your custody of your kids to say this is the religion that I practice. So that's really good, and I'm really happy to see that happen. Now there's another thing that's happened though, which is that it has become cool to be a witch, and not any witch, but a young goth woman, right? So I'm no longer like the witch. It's this person over here, right? So I've had those conversations too with other witches of age, where, you know, I too am a witch. I can be a witch even though I'm an older woman. And in fact, there's a power in being an older woman, right? And men can be witches too. So the genders, right? So there are all of these, like the stereotype. It's important to bring that up, because it's a thing that exists, and it affects all of us who use that word. For me though, being a witch, I'm recentering in it. I've never stopped being a witch. I've done a lot of work in other places. I did a lot of work in Magick, and I've recentered in being a witch, and I really love it. I mean, I'm having all these wonderful conversations with people, and we connect about all these things that are just so important, like who are we in the world? How are we working on ourselves? How can we protect each other? And these kinds of conversations. So I'm finding it's just a really wonderful place to live.
I love that. Jacki?
I have a funny story about being in public declaring I'm a witch. So a couple of years ago, pre-lockdown, I was asked to speak to a group of entrepreneurs about mentorship, and I was being the mentee in the conversation. And I just was introducing myself, blah, 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 entrepreneur, blah, 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 and witch. But where I was fun, because I was in the Detroit branch of the Federal Reserve and there was this big, group of 150 people, if not more, suits. And here I was, a little more round at that time, shorter hair, much more orange, all of my tattoos showing, talking about having a successful company and being a witch. And the folks in the audience going, no less than 5 people came up to me afterwards going, me too, I'm a witch too. How did but the questions I got from the audience was like, how do you get away with this? How can you be this successful business person and have a successful business and respected and funded and all these things and get notoriety and with your tattoos, I don't know if you can see them, and calling yourself a witch. And the question was, how can you do this? And my answer to them was unapologetically, because I get to. My daughter's grown, my husband supports me, my business is established in this world. So it's not, everybody knows I've been doing it for a minute. I'm not hiding anything. And so I get to do this in support of the people who can't. So I get to be a voice for people who maybe can't have this voice. So I get to pave the way. And so I get to do it unapologetically. And it was so much fun to say that. That moment was a pivotal moment for me to say, oh yeah, I could be unapologetically a witch in the Federal Reserve.
I love that. Michael, did you have another comment, or did you just forget? Oh, there you go. The one person too I'd also like to add to paving the way, I think, that deserves it is Lori Cabot, in that she came out so publicly when it was not safe and it was not popular. And then I'd also like to sort of give a shout out to Z Budapest, because she changed the fortune telling laws so that people like me can actually do readings. And they're both really, really historically important to me personally, because they made my life easier, and they still do. I know, especially Z Budapest, they're both very political, and that they, I know that Lori Cabot wanted it to, the religion to be established so that it was less likely you could be fired if you practiced witchcraft. And, Z Budapest is totally a feminist and has really also, I had the pleasure to interview her once, and has such a knowledge of the history of feminism and really interesting lady to talk to, and they're both, elderly women. And since at some point we will do a talk on ageism and magic, and because I do think it is a necessary talk at some point. I'm sure, I know I've experienced it, and I was a little shocked that I would. I was thinking like, well, as I get older, this is going to be an easier thing because, the wise woman or whatever it is, and it has not been true. So
I thank you for giving a shout out to both of these women who really did pave the way for me to keep the banner high. And Brandy, you are another person who has paved the way for people like me, and then I'm paving the way for the next group of folks who don't care. No, I'm not going to say that they don't care, but but who may not know who has paved the way for us. And I think that's really important to say, because that is really, really, to be able to say that I'm a witch, to be able to say this, and actually be in a room with a priest, a minister, and a cop, and have a great conversation, and everybody laugh about it, the fact that we're all sitting on the couch together and say, look, we're a joke. And we're the beginning of a good joke. And the witch, the cop, and the priest walked into a room and sat on a couch, and nothing but good things happen. So that is so amazing that we're able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that pretty much all of you ladies here have done it in your own way. And I think some people are going to be more public in how they paved the way because that is their path. And I do think that one can also have an effect without knowing it by simply being yourself, like you're whoever, maybe you don't want to be a public persona for whatever reason, and that's fine. And I think that's a topic I think is important in magic today, because we were talking about the rise of the popularity, and that, you don't have to, the first day you become a witch or magic, go out and tell everyone. It's not necessary. You just, sure, if it's part of your path, because, like in Jacki's case, she has a business, and of course it's going to come out, and she wants to be honest about who she is. And then Brandy, because she's writing about it too, and she was the president, and then you have Sandra, who has a school. This all makes sense to me, But I think one of the things I'm a little perplexed by is, let's say I'm christened and I become a Christian. Not everyone runs out and tells everyone right away. And so I don't know that that's necessarily healthy in a way. It doesn't matter unless it's part of your path. It matters that you have a public persona. So I would like to sort of hear your thoughts, since all of you have done both, I think, have been more solitary and not quite so visible, and then have experienced a lot of visibility. So talk about how that has been both positively and negatively. We can start with Sandra, perhaps.
It definitely was a challenge. If I hadn't have done the self-development work, if I hadn't have done all of that shadow work and continuously still doing it, it would have been really difficult, because it wasn't something I wanted to do. I've stalled doing this for quite some time because I didn't feel safe coming out for a number of different reasons, not just because it was a witchcraft thing, but also coming out with the school, charging money for the teaching, because it's my livelihood and I need to earn an income the same as everybody else. And then having, of course, the spiritual community and the magical community going, oh, but you shouldn't be charging money for doing all of that sort of stuff. It's, you're not a real witch. I just had somebody email me the other day telling me I wasn't a real witch because I was charging for the course. And there was a lot of those fears. So I had to do a lot of work around my beliefs about all that sort of stuff, money, being a witch in public, what are people going to do? Am I going to get trolled by Christians? All of that kind of thing. So it wasn't easy to make the decision, but it just seemed to happen. My 11th house is in Leo, and I've got Mars in Leo. So there is that public aspect in my chart. I come from a performance art background. So I'm used to being out there and performing in front of people and doing that sort of thing. So it's quite natural for me to stand in front of video and do videos or do things in public. And it just seemed like a natural progression to do that. But there was all of these fears in the way as well of actually stepping out and being publicly a witch at the same time. So it's a mixed bag.
Wow, I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and talking about it in that way, because again, I think that it's important people realize the real experiences of people, whatever they are.
And people don't get that. I think and I know myself, when I was young, I had all that ideology, everything should be free, it's spiritual, it should be free. I didn't live in the real world. I didn't understand people need to make a living. I was a student. I just didn't understand the reality. I was living in this ideological world of the perfect world. This is what I want the world to be like, so therefore I'm going to demand the world be like that, and not realize that there's a difference between ideology and reality. And often ideology doesn't transfer very well into reality when you try to put it into reality. And as I'm older, I realized that. But when I was younger, I too shared those views. So I understand where that mentality is coming from, but I also now see the other side of it and am living the reality of it. And being out there and having these sorts of things thrown at you, it can be a challenge.
And I think it comes back to the idea of know thyself and what are you comfortable ethically doing in terms of charging. And I think if a person does have a belief, their personal belief, not everyone's, that I don't want to charge for something, I think that's fine. But I look at it is you're also charging for a person's time. That if you look at it as I'm charging for time, that's more neutral. And, people also spend ridiculous amounts of money for, things that really don't matter in the long run, we know, or maybe things that matter, but they're not necessarily going to change you. And they'll spend lots and lots of money on it without even thinking. They won't even think twice that, I'm going to go to a movie and spend so much money on Coke and popcorn. And you don't even think about, well, I do, that, man, that's so expensive. I think maybe I'm going to stop. So there's lots of ways people spend money that really are not really valuable, but why not? If you want to spend it on that, great. So what do you think, Jacki, about the whole money thing and the notoriety versus being invisible?
I love what Sandra said about having to go into the shadow side and figure out what my fears around money are. It's been quite a journey for me. I was brought up Catholic, so the first thing we are taught is the meek shall inherit the earth, and meek means poor. And that I'm number 8 of 9 children, so don't ever ask for a thing. Never, never, never. Because if you ask for something, you're greedy, and don't take more than your fair share, and your fair share is less than you think it is. So all of these things are messages that I got growing up. So having had a lot of issues around money, around my fair share and things, and it translated into food issues, and it translated into a lot of other things. And money issues, I don't know if you noticed, but money issues and food issues go hand in hand. They just really, the bread of shame is lockstep with financial issues. And I noticed that a lot of witches have a lot of money issues.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Oh, so big. So
really big money issues.
You should just live off the earth, have a tree house, poop in the woods, all is well. So
living off the earth could be expensive now too if you own the property.
Yeah, don't pay taxes. Live off grid. That's really expensive. Living off grid is very, very expensive. And there's a lot of bugs out there, and I don't like to camp. So here we are. I like to live the life that I live with lots of technology. So so I had to really work on that. And so when I first started my business, I really felt that making profit was akin to sin in the mystical spiritual world, that I was doing something really wrong by having a profitable business. And so I made as little profit as I could and stay in business. And good Lord, I still rode that roller coaster. I mean, I have tons and tons of stories on that. So I really had to figure that out, or else I wasn't going to be in business. And then I had to realize that profit is not evil. And I'm not the man. I can't be the man. I'm the woman. And that it's okay. It's okay to step into abundance, because there is enough. If you step out of the fear of there not being enough, there is enough. And even in the middle of a great recession, there is enough. And so when people are challenging me of like, how dare you, blah, 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 be successful, I can easily turn around and say, I feed a lot of people. My success feeds a lot of people, not just the people that work for me. Store owners call my products the rent makers. I have store owners who literally call and say that they know that when they open their order of Coventry products, and this is not a plug, this is about prosperity and money. So when they open their order of candles, they know they're going to make rent that week. And that is humbling. So that's huge for me, that this is what me figuring out my money karma means, that other people can be profitable too. It's so hugely humbling for me. So that helped me heal that piece. So, hey man, we got to figure this out. We got to stop being afraid of having cash in our pocket or bank accounts with extra zeros before the decimal point. There's nothing wrong with that, because there's lots of people who do that and are super spiritual. And I'm meeting a lot of them. And you know what? You know what they tell me is, they say, I'm a witch too. It's amazing. They just don't tell a lot of people that they're witches. It's amazing how many people I meet. They're like, oh yeah, I'm magical and I'm a witch too. So we just have to, the people who are out there and talking about this stuff, it's like, we got to let go of that fear. And I giggle so much. I just finally read reviews of Coventry Magick on Amazon, and there was 2 bad ones. And I laughed. I'm still laughing. I read them last week and I'm still laughing about them. You know, they're mad that I don't have more basic candle spells in there. They're mad that I have stuff about psychological magic in there. And how dare I do that? And I got preachy about it, which is hilarious, because it's like the anti-preachy book. It's about, come on, just do what you want to do. Kind of like get out of your own way and figure out some stuff. So that whole thing about just like get this whole money feeling and doing this for money. A lot of people just get mad at me and they feel that I've sold out. I don't care. Go ahead, feel that way. I'm not worried about you. I've spent 20 years, let's say, being afraid of those folks. And I spent last 10 years seriously healing from that. And now I'm going to say, come on with me. I'll show you how to do it.
I got that a lot as a woman doing tarot card readings, people expecting me to barter with them, even if it's something I don't want. And to be honest, I got burnt early on with the barter system. And I also came to terms with, I charge really reasonably, I think, and I give my charity away where I want to. And I don't want to feel forced, and I said, this is my living. This is what Michael and I have done only. This is our full profession. I can't afford to give a whole lot away. And I don't discount. And we used to do a lot more charity events and stuff, which are really good. But I even started picking the charities I wanted to support. Like, I really believed in this and this is awesome and I'll give my time. But I found sometimes maybe being a female doing tarot card readings, there were this certain expectations early on. Now I don't get it, because I have pretty strict boundaries. I think people can sense it. So if I decide to give you a reading, you are rare indeed for free, because I just want to for some reason. And but I wonder sometimes if some of that's being a woman a little bit, or we're supposed to
absolutely
give more.
It's definitely, a lot of women entrepreneurs have struggled with the money side of it, because we're supposed to be the givers. We're supposed to be the helpers and not want anything in return, when our energy is actually the energy of the receiver.
Well, that's a good point. Brandy, your experience of all this.
I would love, I was just thinking, I got to write a blog post of myths that we need to overturn. This idea that you can't charge for the craft, the idea that you can't buy the tools because you have to do that. And people who are teachers have to make a living. I'm a writer, so I don't make money. So I had a job. I had to go get a job, right? Because it just wasn't going to pay the rent. And so that helped me kind of deal with that. And I had to figure out how to be successful as a woman and accept that. And one of the ways I got to it psychologically was to say, I take care of other people like Jacki. I'm taking care of my family. I think it's a mark of magical success. If you can take care of yourself and take care of other people, that means you're doing it right. But it's also important to me to make a flow in my life. So I'm not getting money and then keeping it. I get money and it passes on. It does something. So it's not an end in itself. And I think that helps me to feel more spiritual about that work, even when I'm doing a job and it's a paycheck, right? And then about being public, I want to say I've written 5 books. I do a lot of publicity. I'm doing this now. I'm out there in the public. I'm still scared. Every single day, every time I put up a blog post, I'm scared somebody's going to come for me. I'm scared of the bad reviews. We're targets as magical workers and as women. We're targets when we put ourselves out. So it's still really scary to me to do that. And it's really important for me to exemplify this, to continue to say, I'm a witch. This is what a witch looks like. It's also important for me sometimes to just close down and say, you know what, I'm not going to do an interview this month. I'm just going to take care of myself and have support practices around that, and then have people around me who support that. I think that sense of needing to be private is that sort of public-private, being alone, being in a group thing. That it's really important to strike the balance. And that's, I guess, kind of the magic or the art of it. But conversations like this really help. I mean, they really do. We help each other, and we help the people who are coming along. You know, this is what it looks like. This is how you can navigate these things. And we're all doing it. It's not you. Everybody deals with issues about money and about putting yourself out in public. Everybody deals with that.
I'd like to ask, what do you think? Let's say I've been working at Magick for, let's say, 5 years, and I have a course I want to introduce, and I have some basics I want to teach people. What do you suggest in terms of how people come to terms with the charging of it? Do you think it's based also on the location they're in? Because certainly some places it's a lot cheaper to live, and you have to be realistic about, I've got to pay my rent. Or what would you think? What would you say about how they can approach finding the right price for their course?
What are other people charging? I mean, one thing you want to do, you were just saying, maybe it's cheaper where I live, I can charge less. You don't want to undercut your, other people. I always look at what the going rate is, and try to charge. Mostly it's when I'm paying for something, when I'm paying for art, or paying for editing. It's really important to me not to ask people to do work for free, but to ask, them to give them money. And then I say, what do you charge? And they don't know. So I go look it up. Like, okay, well, what are other artists charging for a cover? Here, I will offer you this much money. And they're like, oh, really? So that's how I know it's a really universal thing. It's not, and it's not just writing or magic. It's also people who do art, right? Yeah. But yeah, other people are doing this teaching, and maybe look outside the magical community, because we tend to take everything like one decimal point over. Yeah. Like, go look at the people who are doing women's teaching, women's courses, or you don't even have to go to the business courses, which is like $1,000, but people charge hundreds of dollars for things we charge $10 for, right? So look at what other people are doing.
That's a really good idea.
I really think so many classes are undercharged and then undervalued, and then you don't get the students. A $10 course, you think, oh, people can't afford this, so I'm going to only charge $10, and then you only have 3 students, and you wonder why. It's because it's not valued. Mm-hmm. And some people listening to this are going to say, shut up, Jacki, I don't want to pay more for a class. But what are you getting? People ask me frequently, can't I talk about this all the time. So I have a candle, full-size candle, and I have the same thing in a votive. And they'll say, well, can't I just buy the votive and get the same result? And I said, well, here's a prosperity candle. Do you want a new job? Or here's a votive candle. Do you want to find $5 in the street? So what do you, this is a $10 meetup. What are you going to get out of a $10 meetup versus taking, a $100 intensive, 3-hour intensive? What do you expect to get out of that? And what energy is that instructor going to give? What credibility do they have? What credibility do you have in teaching that class? Sandra has a ton of credibility. So if she's teaching an online class and I'm going to take the class from her, I am going to shell out the bucks because I want to learn from her. And P.S., I want to learn from her. I would love to take one of Sandra's classes. I would love to take one of Brandy's classes, probably online, and because I'm not in Australia. But just I want to learn from this person. So it's really get out there. First of all, get out there, let people meet you, promote yourself. The more you promote yourself, the more people are going to be interested in taking your class, and you can charge how much. It's not just how much you're going to charge an hour. Like, I'm here for an hour, so I guess if I walk away with $200 in my pocket, that's okay. It's not that hour that you're here, they're teaching 10 people. So how many hours did it take you to create that course material? Like, if it took you, 40 hours to write this course material, or 180 hours to write this course material for this 2-hour class, well, you got to add that in too. You're giving a great value. When I teach at conventions where, there's a bunch of those free 90-minute classes, I pack so much into it. I had to learn to give 10% of what I try and pack in that 90 minutes. It's like, whoa, Jacki, 10% of that. Write that class and then give 10% of it, just because people can't take that much away in 90 minutes. Yeah. But add your time in there too.
Yeah, it's the energy exchange as well. And I know from my own experience of my past where I wanted everything for free, I wasn't valuing that person's time. I wasn't valuing the energy that they put into what they were doing. Right. It was incredibly selfish of me to just want to take from them and not give something in exchange. And when we look at the history of witches traditionally, if somebody came to a witch to have something done, there was always some type of exchange, even if it was back before money became the thing. No one went empty-handed. There was always this understanding that we share resources in some way. And I think a lot of people in the spiritual community forget about that because they're so obsessed with money being evil and being a bad thing. And most of the people who have a problem with paying for things generally are too good with money themselves. So there's a lot of money work they need to do as well, which would probably help their financial situation. I know that was my problem.
Those are all excellent points. And I think it's a conversation you can continue to have around money and spirituality. And so they're really wonderful points. I did want to ask all of you your thoughts about tools, both as beginners and what you like now. And Brandy sort of mentioned that it's okay to buy, which I completely agree with. And I'm just going to sort of put out that I particularly love cauldrons and brooms. It's just my thing. I do. Yes. And I'm not going to make a cauldron. I wish I could. So, Jacki, what do you think about the idea of tools when you first started and where you are now with it?
Oh, so when I first started, I remember going to the gun and knife show to find the perfect athame for a year. I scoured, drove hours to find the perfect knife. Oh Lord. And to that perfect athame that I would hold up in ritual. That's it. And then as I walked away from that particular practice, for mental health reasons, because of who was involved in it, and I packed up all the tools and salt because of what was going on at that point in my life, this was my best athame ever. And I really didn't, I ended up becoming a very kitchen witch. The wooden spoon, the kitchen knife, the whatever I needed. is around me, and I'm very much a kitchen witch. So my tools are around me wherever I need them. Today's spell we did with the basil plant was, you know, a metal serving spoon digging into that pot. So to do so, it's what's around me. So I'm a kitchen witch. So I use what's around me.
Wonderful. Brandy, yourself?
Tools. When I was a baby witch, when I was like 18 years old, I was like, all right, I did everything that you were supposed to do. You know, I got this silver chalice and I got my athame and I buried it in the earth in my apartment complex out in the garden for 9 days and dug it back up. Right. And now I'm much more like where Jackie is, like, what's the tool that I have around? I have a whole book, Cord Magic, like get some embroidery floss and that's your tool. That's the spell that you're making. Right. I want to say though, I have a sword, and I have a sword as a priestess that I got that I love. It's only about this tall, so I can wield it. I put my menstrual blood on it when I was still menstruating, and it's got a red handle. And I've used that sword as a witch to initiate. I've used that sword as a Gnostic priestess in the Gnostic Mass, and I've been looking at it lately, going, who's going to inherit this? This is like me. This is my tool, right? So I'm like, what happens to our tools? I've had enough. I've been executor of people's magical estates, and you usually like find people you can move it on to. But I'm like, wow, it's a really interesting question. And there's a museum, the Museum of Witchcraft. I'm gonna get the city wrong. Is it Detroit?
No, it's in Ohio, Bucklands.
Bucklands, yeah.
Yeah, it's in Ohio.
Yes. Which I visited. I'm so sorry because I love that. I love that museum so much, and it was so moving to see the tools that people used. The exact, athame, the exact crown. These things like absorb ourselves. So I think 99.99% of my tools can move on, but there's this one tool that's like me that's important. So that's where I am with tools.
I love that. That's a really good question. And I would also include personal books of shadows could be fascinating. Just people that aren't known, that have their own private. I think as someone that likes to read journals, I would be very fascinated by that. Sandra, yourself, what do you think about tools now, in the beginning, when you first started practicing?
When I first started practicing, I had no money. I was a student. So I actually started with secondhand. The cup I still use actually is one that I got from the Salvation Army. So I cleansed it and have still used that. It's just a ceramic cup. It's not even a silver cup. My athame was a letter opener in the replica of Excalibur. So that was my first athame. And I didn't actually get I want to call a proper athame, as in an actual dagger, until I came back officially to the craft when I left the Sufi group. It was like two things happened on my birthday that year. And one was I got a chalice and I got the athame. And it's like they just fell from the sky, because I just started getting back into wanting to go back to practicing the craft again, even though I always still identified as being a witch. I wasn't practicing in that form, and I just started practicing again, and I just felt the need to come back to that again, because where I'd been in this group with this dysfunctional leader was just I was so disconnected, just felt totally disconnected from spirituality, from spirit, from nature, just totally pinched off. And then when I made the decision that I wanted to come back to the craft, I felt that draw. Suddenly on my birthday, I get the chalice and I get the athame, far more beautiful than the things that I had been able to afford when I was first starting out. So for me, the tools have been whatever I can use that is useful to me. Being a Virgo, I'm very practical. And my athame is particularly important to me because it's probably the tool I use the most. I would say I definitely use my athame more than anything.
Interesting. Now, do any of you use wands? Even makeshift ones?
Not a lot.
I use what I use the most is my feather fan. My feather fan. Yeah, I just said that right. My feather fan. I don't know where that came from. I use that a lot, and a lot of cleansing stuff that I do. The other thing I use a lot is I have 4 railroad spikes and from a certain railroad, and I use those a lot in different ritual.
I love that.
To create boundaries, to earth the energy that I'm doing. Right now, I have them tied to the 4 legs of my altar to create that sacred space. That's my big thing that I use.
I have a piece of driftwood that I use as a wand. And then sometimes when I'm casting circles, I use flowers. So I used to use freesia flowers from the florist because I just love I'm Georgian. Georgians make circles with flowers. So I'll take a flower and cast a circle with it.
I love that idea. That's beautiful. I love that. I'm going to do that. That's really, I've never heard that. It's so amazing all the different ways people do things. And that's what I love about a show like this. I get to hear something totally new. I've never read it, never heard it. So I've never heard about circle casting with flowers. Sounds kind of hippie-ish in a good way.
Brandy, I want to tell you a quick story about Buckland's. It's in Cleveland, by the way, Buckland's Museum of Woodcraft.
Yes, it was in Cleveland.
I was there last year, and there's a crown that is on a hook in this beautiful, I don't know, I forget what they're called. Anyway, it's a display case, kind of one you would have in your house. And I forget whose crown it is, but the entire time we were there, it was moving.
Whoa.
Just very gently. And I wish I could remember whose crown it was, and because I recognized the name, and I was a little, my adrenaline was up. Seeing that it was just slightly moving the entire time. So a lot of people left the museum. So my husband and I decided that we were going to debunk it. So he went on the other side of this display case and jumped up and down, and it did not change its movement. It was this steady movement. And so I started talking to it, and I said, "Are you moving? Is this your energy moving this?" And then it moved faster. And then I just started talking, and then it moved slower, and then it moved faster. And I said, "Well, thank you for letting me know that you're here. And thank you for, blah, blah, blah." It was like, so there's a lot of energy there, a lot, and they are there. There's a lot, and I don't know if it's residual, if it's just different soul parts, but there's those practitioners, they left their thumbprint on those tools. It is an amazing place to go as a witch. Amazing.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I never heard about that, so I'm going to certainly look into it. And I just love that idea. Maybe there'll be other smaller versions of that, since there are more people practicing witchcraft and maybe would want to give it to some place. Maybe the family didn't want it. Not every family will want whatever the person has in general. So it's a wonderful idea. I would also like to talk, we have just enough time probably to mention the idea of creating some kind of a sacred space and how that has changed over the years for all of you. We'll start with Sandra, maybe.
Wow. To me, my sacred space has been wherever my altar is. That's always just been my sacred space. Sometimes I've shared it in as a physical sacred space. It's been either in my bedroom, or I've had a special room. The space that I'm in now is my sacred space. But more than anything, it's being in nature is my sacred space. So it's taking that sacred space wherever you go, actually, because the sacred space is actually within yourself. And you create that by doing the practices, both the inner practices and the outer practices. So while you can have a physical sacred space from practicing in the same place every day, you can also take your sacred space with you because it's something that's within you, and that becomes a part of your practice. So as you're practicing every day, you're creating that sacred space.
Very true. Very true. Brandy or Jacki, what do you think about the concept of having a sacred space, and how has it changed over the years for you?
So I've done big group rituals in ceremonial groups where we have a temple and it takes 2 days to set up and it takes all the gear. So I've done that edge of it, right? Right now I have a chair in my corner where I do sitting practice, and that's my sacred space. My favorite thing to do though, like Sandra, is just go out in nature. So I sit on the beach and I get 4 stones. I draw a circle with driftwood and I put the stones in the corners. I go out in the woods and I collect a feather and a stone, and then I try to find something with water, and put that around me and make the space there, and then do whatever I'm going to do. And I think it's true. The sacred space is what you carry with you. What it means for me is making a marker around myself while I'm doing something, and then dissolving that marker that's been the energy container, dissolving that as I move back out into the world. It's important to have that boundary so I can do the work and hold the energy. And it's also important to put it back down so I'm not leaving it behind me, and I know that I'm moving from one space to another. And that's why the chairs, I only do sitting practice in the chair, and also the cats. The cats also do their sitting practice there.
Yeah, I like the idea of sort of removing it too. That's a really interesting thought. I like that. I think I forget to do that. Jacki, I know you're more urban. So how do you see sacred space as an urban person and witch?
Well, the young witch days, I think that continuously building that sacred space over and over again creates that spiritual muscle memory of what it's like to have a sacred space. And then I think that initiation that you go through is when you learn at that visceral level that the sacred space is within you. And you learn how it blossoms, and it is wherever you go. Then exactly like Brandy said, is that depends on what's happening. If you're doing a public ritual, I have lots of different ways of creating sacred space in a public ritual where, we do a little spiral thing, or we get everybody involved, or whatever it's going to be. Everybody gather some sticks, all that stuff. Yes, I do stuff with sticks, even though I am an urban girl. But at Coventry, my building is my sacred space. So when we moved into this building, I built sacred space in the building. And I maintain this entire building as a sacred space. I also have my altar here, but because we make magical items, this is the behind the scenes stuff that not many people know, is that I do make sure that this whole building is a sacred space because we make magical stuff, and we have a lot of elementals and spiritual beings that come in and out. And if I don't create a sacred space, the things that come into this building is not okay. They go bump in the night and they go bump in the middle of the day, and things break. So I make sure, and the people who work here, it's not okay. So we have that going on. And so sacred space is, it's actually now that I say this, it's really critical everywhere I go. In today's ritual, I just I created a sacred space informally, saying, okay, well, here we are all together. I said, notice who's to your left and to your right, who's here with you, and whose influence you are sharing in this moment. Rather than going, okay, everybody, let's call in the watchtowers. I said, so I was very informal without freaking everybody out. So
thank you for that. Now we're pretty close. We have about 8 minutes. So I thought maybe any last word, whatever you want to offer up to people, whether it's beginners or advanced, that you would like to sort of close out the show with. And we'll start here with Brandy.
Brandy's looking at her notes thinking, is there something I didn't say? My number one thing is that you own your own magic. You're the person who gets to decide what you do, and nobody else owns that. Nobody can give that to you. You don't need an authorization. If you need an authorization, I am authorizing you to do your own magic. It's okay. That's my one thing I want people to know.
I love that. I think it should be on a t-shirt. Seriously, I would buy it. You own your own magic. I've not seen it, and I think it's a wonderful idea and very succinct. Sandra, yeah. What do you have to say or to offer up?
Just that this is a path that connects you to you and to nature, spirit, and magic. So see it as an ongoing learning that's always going to evolve and change. It's not going to remain static. It's going to be an experience. And if you allow yourself to flow with where the path takes you and see all of the things that it does bring you, whether it's the perceived to be good or bad, it's all part of your learning process and your opportunity to be able to connect more with spirit and more with yourself. So it's an evolving path that you'll continue to walk. So you're never going to get to the end. It's a continuation. So don't expect that you're going to reach a point where you're going to know everything, because you won't. It's just ongoing.
I love that too. And it's so true. And it actually, to tell someone at the beginning of the journey might be really, really helpful when they feel like somehow they've done something wrong because they're no longer feeling the same needs, or that suddenly I want to be solitude and I've been really part of covens for 10 years. And I think that's a really good advice overall. Jacki, yourself.
It's really hard to get magic wrong. If your intent, check your intent. Number one, if your intent is to create blessing, to create healing in your life, to create betterment, then it's really hard to get things wrong. So check your intent. If your intent is to blow somebody else out of the water, go take a nap and think about it twice. But it's really hard to get magic wrong. So again, just go experience, try stuff out. Don't worry about where the moon is. Don't worry about where, if this patchouli says to use it like this and to do it like this and in this time of the day. Don't worry about that. Be the decider of your own magic. Somebody decided that you need to do it this way. They decided. So be the decider of your own self. Exactly what Brandy said. It's like, I authorize you to make it different. And everything has a spirit. Everything has a spirit and a history and a connection to the spirit realm. So if you connect with that, if you get quiet, connect with your intent, connect with its spirit, and connect your intent with that spirit, you are already in the middle of magic.
I love that. That's also really important and beautiful. I did want to do a little bit of a shout out, and you can add in other contact information, but I know, for instance, you can reach Sandra at the mysterywitchschool.com, which will also be on the Sixth Sense Society webpage eternally unless she changes it. And then there's also, I know Jacki, you can reach her at coventrycreations.com, and also on Instagram at Coventry Candles and at jacki.smith.official. And then Brandy Williams also is brandywilliamsauthor.com, and on Instagram at brandywilliamsauthor. Pretty easy to find on all of that. I didn't know if you had an Instagram profile, Sandra. I looked, but I wasn't sure.
No, I don't do Instagram, but a good place to see a lot of what I do is YouTube. So Mystical Witch School on YouTube.
Oh, good. And subscribe to her channel then, and then you'll be able to catch all of her shows and look at all the archives. And then is there anything coming up that any of you wanted to announce? Do you have any classes? Do you have any books coming out? Anything at all?
I do have a book coming out July 1st. The Big Book of Candle Magic is coming out. And I've got some big launch stuff. So watch out for some announcements. And it's Coventry's 30th year.
Ooh, 30 again, wow. That number.
Yeah, it's our 30th year in business. We're going to be doing little celebrations for the next 12 months. And just keep an eye out for some cool stuff.
And congratulations on all of the astrology candles that I haven't seen them all, but I know you launched that line right after the last show. I think we were on, you were talking about it. It seems like you have a lot to choose from what I can tell.
Yeah, we have 10, and actually in June 1, we are launching a smaller version. So we had a beautiful boxed version, and now we're launching the unboxed version. So the refill, shall we say.
Cool. Wow, that's awesome. And Brandy, did you have any announcements you wanted to make, or just even promote something that you're already doing?
I have republished For the Love of the Gods. So if you go to Amazon, Brandy Williams, you'll find it there. I'm in the process of republishing Woman Magician. I've been asked to a conference, a Women in Magic conference in July, but they don't have their website up yet. So I don't know what the date is. So I'll be advertising that on Instagram and Facebook and on my webpage.
I am so happy The Woman Magician is coming back. I highly recommend it to people. It was how I met Brandy. I don't know when you first published it. Was it how long? 10 years ago or more? It was so innovative and important. I loved it, and I was so happy to actually find her and get her on the show, because isn't it great to get people that you are a fan of their books, you know? But I think I still think it's a very unique book, and I'm really glad that it's going to be coming out again, because I don't know that there's anything quite like it still out there. You think there might be, but at least I haven't seen it. I'm not, of course, I haven't read everything, but I do read a lot. So congratulations on everything, ladies. And Michael, did you have any last thing you wanted to add in, because you had some good comments earlier?
No, although we can ask Sandra if she has anything coming up she wants to promote too. So kick it back to Sandra.
Yes.
Just in relation to what we've been talking about, a lot of people have trouble knowing where to start their witchcraft practice. So I've got a free masterclass on my website. It's one of the first things you see when you get to my website. It's called How to Start Your Witchcraft Practice. And I think it's about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and it just goes into some just really basic things of like where you can start and the sorts of ways you can pace yourself with your learning. It's coming from a Wiccan point of view, but it's pretty eclectic.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think I saw a little bit of one of your videos, and I really loved it. You definitely are a good presenter. You were very eloquent and very, I don't know, very real. I felt like a real connection to you when I first heard you. And I think to me, that's important as someone that wants to learn from somebody.
Oh, good. Yeah, me too.
So thank you, ladies. I think this has been a really valuable conversation. I've certainly enjoyed it, and I hope all of you out there have enjoyed it. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together, and have a great magical week.